Good afternoon. This is Jim D'Antona for the Chamber's Working Lunch Weekly series, where we talk with community leaders, getting to know the person behind the work and the important things they are delivering. Today, we'll be having a conversation with Ali Jansen, the second generation owner of Frameworks, a custom picture framing studio and art gallery. Born and raised in San Luis Obispo, Ali studied art at the University of California at Santa Barbara, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in art history and a Master of Education. After college, she spent a little time abroad, utilizing her expertise by teaching English as a second language in one of the art capitals of the world, Florence, Italy. And upon returning home to the Central Coast, she eventually heard the call of the family business Frameworks. Ali is well known for her incredible amount of community service. She has served on the boards for various local nonprofits, including the YMCA, Humankind Fair Trade, Leadership SLO, is a past president of our Rotary Club, the Rotary Club of San Luis Obispo de Tolosa, and has previously served on the SLO Chamber of Commerce board. I'm excited to talk to Ali about the process of taking over the family business, how Framework continues to be successful, and how she sees the future of the industry through the pandemic. Ali, thank you so much for being here.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you in today. As everyone starts to settle into lunch, where are you zooming in from today?
I'm at home, and fortunately I live right above the shop, so that was just like a quick jaunt up the stairs, get set up, and I'm here.
That is the ideal commute.
Yes.
Well, you know, we always enjoy getting to know how people came to the Central Coast. As I said in the intro, you were born and raised here, so were your parents the ones to find the Central Coast, or was it earlier generation?
So they were living in Southern California, and it was the 70s, and they were total hippies and had this idealized version of coming up to the coast and living in Big Sur and living off the land. And so they got up here and they started looking for property, and they realized they couldn't afford property in Big Sur. So they just went inland, and they kept going more and more inland until we landed in Creston. And so that's where I grew up as a kid. And then we moved into town when I was in school.
And then the time in Creston, were they looking out as they were looking to live out there? Was there looking to be ag? Were they looking to live, or was there some other kind of idea?
At that time, my mom was a dental hygienist here in town, and then my dad was managing a cattle ranch out on Highway 58. And then they kind of realized that they wanted to start a business and started talking around, and they got some good advice to start a picture framing business. We had other family members that were picture framers, and they said it was a nice business to be in. When they did open, though, they were one of 13 shops in town, so there was quite a bit of competition.
Well, and so thinking about you, one of the stories that's, you know, commonly that I've heard from folks raised here is I had to get away and see other places. In my intro, I talked about you going to UCSB. Clearly that wasn't far enough away. You ended up in Florence. Was there a particular draw to that specific place? And what was your life like there?
Well, Florence was amazing. So I had studied art history at UCSB, and really focused on Italian Renaissance, which I loved. So I was just in love with all of that art and the culture. And so I had finished up my teaching credential and my master's, and I was like 21 years old. And I was just like, I gotta be like a young 20-year-old and kind of be a little bit irresponsible. So my version of that was going to Italy and working. And I mean, Florence was just a wonderful place to be. I loved it because I remember for my birthday there, I was able to like spend time in the Uffizi Gallery looking at Botticelli's Birth of Venus and just be like, happy birthday. This is my view today. It was amazing.
That is definitely a pretty special birthday. And while you lived there, did you stay just in Italy, or were you able to kind of travel around Europe?
Yeah, so I definitely was there, and every weekend I traveled somewhere. You know, I made just enough money to support my traveling habits with no savings. It was awesome. You know, you go to Paris for the weekend, you go to London for the weekend, you go to the south of France. You know, it's just, it really is such a small continent that you can do great weekend trips and feel like you're in a totally different world.
Wow. And I would assume from with your art background, actually being able to go and if you're in Paris or
Yes.
you're in Germany, you just taken over.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was wonderful to like space things out too, in terms of like going to museums and churches. It wasn't like, oh, you have to cram everything in, one day. It was like, no, we're here for a year. We can take our time, which is wonderful.
So was there ever a time where that you were like 1 year, maybe 20?
Oh, sure. Even now, I'm like, how can I do frameworks and live in Italy? How does that work? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see going back there.
That's fabulous. Well, you eventually came back to SLO County.
Yeah.
Was the plan to take over the family business when you got back?
No, not at all. I came back and I started teaching, and I love teaching. When I left teaching, it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But at that time, my parents were ready to sell their business, and they just bought a sailboat, and they were literally sailing off to Mexico, and they were going to sell the business and just be done. And I just couldn't let the business leave our family. I wasn't ready for that. I don't have siblings, so I really realized, okay, if you want to do something, you better jump on it. And so that's when I bought the business from them. And then I think like 2 months later, they literally sailed off into the sunset. And then it was go time.
Oh, your parents may be a whole fascinating discussion. Other than that, just how they're able to do all of this work, head off to the North Coast,
Yeah.
Central Coast, to Mexico. Pretty amazing. But there's a lot of fascinating discussions about multi-generational family businesses. The idea of taking over from your parents and being able to run the business without their constant intrusion, but also being able to ask them for advice on how they dealt with the situation. What was the process like for you? And do you have any words of advice on best practices for making it work?
Gosh, I was fortunate in that they were far enough away that they weren't literally like hovering over my shoulder, watching every move that I made. So I had a lot of freedom that way. But I still had some communication with them where I was able to at least email them once a week and ask them some questions. And then like, even just now, it's like now been 16 years since I've had the business. I still want to chat with my parents about, you just want a sounding board with ideas of somebody that's had experience in the industry and the business and the clientele. And I still go to my parents to this day just to discuss ideas.
And thinking about how do your parents, is their personality one that makes it a little easier to work because they're very much that kind of hands off, or do you think it's tough for them in terms of trying to not be involved all the time?
Oh, I don't know. I think, it's probably at some point they've got their opinions, obviously, but I also think they're like peaceful people where it's like, okay, this is the next generation. It's a new chapter. We did what we did, and now it's your turn to go forward. And I'd probably say I earned more respect for them, or I earned their respect when like going through the economic downturn. Because I remember talking to my parents and they're like, God, we've never experienced anything like that. I'm like, that's not really helping me. Like, I need some encouragement, and they're like, God, that's horrible. I don't know. What are you going to do? And I'm like, so I think then they said, okay, you know what you're doing. You got this.
Well, and it's, we'll dig into it a little bit later. That must have seemed like a dream compared to COVID, but we'll kind of dig into that a bit. But how long has Framework been in existence? You talked about your parents getting the business started when they got here. How long has it been?
So they started the business on April Fool's, 1990. So we're now at 31 years.
That is truly incredible.
Yes.
And you were talked a little bit about, there was a lot of competition back when they started. But that also, speaks very highly of either the business model, the relationships. Can you talk about the values of the business that have helped you survive?
So when my parents started the business, there was 13 other shops here just in town, and now we're down to like about 2. But I think they have always had this approach, and I still have this approach, is to be very friendly with all of the other shops. Like, I want to help them out. I mean, we constantly refer people back and forth. Like, people will send their clients to us because they're like, I don't even want to touch this project, and we're happy to jump in. And so I think having that friendly relationship is really important. And I think that's something that was started with my parents. It was never like, oh, this is cutthroat competition. It's like, no, we're all in this together. And we really honestly do want to see everybody succeed.
I would say that's, again, something pretty special to the Central Coast. No matter how many businesses I talk to here, whether, it's event spaces, winemakers, everybody's talking about collaborating, or at least knowing there's enough room for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so talk about you obviously there's long term with the family. Was that your parents also kind of building the relationships with friends? Like, how did you start that process to get those relationships that lead to this long-term business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just every time somebody is coming in the door, they're bringing in something that's special to them. And so they're being vulnerable and sharing that with me and my staff. And so you develop a deeper relationship that way. And then you earn their trust by making recommendations in terms of like what type of framing material to use, because it's going into their personal space most of the time. And so it immediately becomes a personal relationship just by the nature of the communication that we have together.
Well, and I would think that your background in art, is extremely helpful in the work you do. I was at Nate's on Marsh the other night, and he told me you help collaborate on the art in his restaurant. Do you collaborate with artists on your work?
Yeah, that was such a fun project. So Nate had commissioned Jerry Scott, a local artist who we represent here in our gallery, to do 6 original paintings for his restaurant. And then we worked with him to do the framing. And it's so much fun to work with other artists and then see their vision come to fruition. And then once, the paintings were framed and up in his space, it's wonderful to see. So I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was great to see it the other night, and it was beautiful pieces, but also fit so nicely in with the restaurant. Can you talk just real quick about the gallery part of your? Do you have people that you specifically show, or is you kind of open and people are working with you all the time?
So we represent about 3 different local artists on a consistent basis. And then between that, we would host solo shows of a variety of different local artists. And like pre-COVID, we'd probably have like maybe 3 openings a year that we'd time with Art After Dark. But since March of 2020, we haven't actually had any receptions, but we've had probably our highest art sales. So people are hungry to buy original artwork. And so it's been awesome to be able to represent these artists and sell their work and get this into great homes. But it's just a weird dynamic. It's not like the typical reception and like putting on that show. It's like, no, people are just coming in and doing it quietly.
Well, yeah, and we're sad to see that, that those specific events aren't there, but I'll tell you, I've seen it too, is the consumption of
Yes.
Art is really amazing. I'd love to know from you, is there more to framing than just picking color or style when considering framing?
Yeah, for us, we definitely focus quite a bit on conservation. So we want to be able to protect the artwork for as long as possible. And so that's definitely a conversation that we have with our clients in terms of making recommendations about using conservation matte materials that are like acid-free, lignin-free. So we're not using cardboard and things that are going to yellow and damage your artwork. And then also using the appropriate glass. You want glass with UV protection, like most people have got quite a bit of light in their homes. And so we want to make sure that pieces are protected with UV protection. And then of course, we always want to make recommendations for using material that is suitable to hold the artwork, and use quality material, because you can build a frame out of all sorts of things, but you want to make sure that you're using good material.
Well, and that's a great question, kind of lead into one of my thoughts was, we've heard from many other industries, they're finding new materials to build their products. Are there any new types of materials or techniques that you see coming in the future?
So we kind of see all the material that we use to build our frames is based in wood. So it's all lumber that's milled and then either gets a gesso and like either a gold leafing or some sort of patina or process on there. But we're not using like any of the like polystyrofoam type of materials that are often what you see like at like I'd say like more disposable art locations where the frames are really quite temporary. My trick is like, if you pick it up and it just feels like this is really light for how big it is, well, probably not made out of wood. So yeah, we steer away from that. We stay with solid hardwoods. I've got some great companies that I work with in Colorado where they mill all of their own solid walnut and cherry and maple, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, the material we get to work with is beautiful, and so then the frames turn out gorgeous and really enhance the artwork.
And really, to me, one of the questions that comes up is, displaying your art or special prints or whatever they are without framing. I saw an artist the other day and he said, no, I'm not going to let you kind of take this without a frame. I mean, is that
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like an approach to having like a clean, simple aesthetic. And I get that, but like if you just put a painting up on the wall with no frame, it just, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's really pretty, but it just feels unfinished. And so even if you just put like a simple thin floater frame on it, just something to give it that finished edge, so it just is complete. And then really the whole goal is always to enhance the artwork. So we don't want to be staring at the framing, you want to enhance the artwork.
Well, and also you talked a little bit in there about conservation. The idea, obviously, some of that is the idea that probably a lesser frame wouldn't necessarily protect this valuable piece, or whatever you have, this maybe treasured item. And from that, maybe is the plexiglass, all of those things part of that?
Yep, exactly. So, we definitely, like I had said, want to use a UV filtering glass or acrylic. We'd make recommendations based on like size, if we should use acrylic. If you don't want the glass to, shatter, it can be quite heavy if you have such a large light of glass. I think our glass, the largest light that we come is like 46 by 60 or so, that needs a big frame to hold that heavy piece of glass.
That's pretty interesting. Well, I'd love to know, because I think of things in the sense of art and prints or photos, right? But I'm sure there's other types of framing you do. What's the most interesting or piece you framed?
It's fun. You never know what somebody's going to bring in. Literally, you just never know. I think one of my more memorable projects was a gentleman came in and he like opened up his little box and he showed it to me, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I can tell we're going to do a shadow box, but what is this? He's like, oh, this is my pacemaker. And I was like, oh, tell me more about your pacemaker. And, it had helped him live this life so far, and he had to swap it out for his upgrade. And he felt like he wanted to honor that pacemaker and frame it. And so we did that. And it's up in his home and hopefully brings him some joy.
Shadow boxes are really an interesting idea. How complicated, like, how do you have to build those out? You talk a little bit about that. I've seen them, but I've never tried one. Yeah. I
grab this right here real quick. So I made this shadow box for my house, and it's just spoons. It's just a variety of different spoons and forks, and they're all kind of funky. I don't know. I just thought they were kind of cool. But I wanted to do that to kind of honor like our family's history with cooking. But so like to do that, it's like we're hand stitching everything down because we want to, protect it and make it all reversible, so that if any point in time you wanted to get back into the shadow box and take everything out, you could. And so, yeah, we're hand stitching it down to like, that's got a silk background to it. So it's got some nice texture. And then like wanted to choose a frame that, complemented the ornateness of the silverware. And then of course, museum glass to make it shine.
That's really incredible. And again, it does show how to present something or save something or show something that you think is really cool. Oh, that's super interesting. You talked a little bit about, your suppliers and the other states. I'm curious, as Frameworks experienced during the pandemic, has the supply chain disruptions been a problem for you?
So at first we were fine. I had no issues, but we've always been like a lagging indicator in terms of our industry. So I was kind of like waiting for it to catch up to us. I would say like early on though, it was really hard for me to get any custom acrylic. So if like we wanted plexiglass on a really large piece and had to have it custom made, it wasn't possible because all of my manufacturers were diverting their attention away from picture framing and towards like PPE for hospitals and other places. So that was interesting. And then I'd say now more recently in the past few months, it's just kind of getting those containers that are sitting off the coast, into port and unloaded and then onto the trucks to be delivered out to us. Which I guess is also like, it's another reason to, focus on finding your sources from American made products. My American made companies, they're going gangbusters and they're busy, but they're able to fulfill all the orders and not have any issues.
Right. Definitely seeing some of the benefits of locally sourced or closer sourced pieces. And maybe you could talk, so what was the business like during the pandemic? Like I said, we've definitely seen more of consumption of art, but from your business side, has it just been ups? It's been ups and downs. What it's been like?
So I, like a month ago or so, I saw this bumper sticker that I was like, oh, this is exactly it. And it was like the like graph of the heartbeat going up and down. And it said, without the highs and lows, we'd all be dead. And I was like, that's exactly it. Like, that's what I felt like this past, year and a half has been, where we were completely closed for 2 months. And like for the first week or two, it was like novel, and it was like, okay, I can just finish the projects that I'm in the middle of. I'll finish all these up and then I can go deliver them to all my clients. But then like reality came crashing in, and it was like, we're having no new business coming in. And I was like that was paralyzing. And so that was extremely challenging those 2 months. And, fortunately, I had some great relationships with local bankers and was able to talk to them and get support and get our funding. And so through the PPP and EIDL, and just, I'd say really though, what was great about it was actually being able to have phone conversations with our local bankers. It wasn't like I had to send some email to corporate trying to get somebody to talk to me. Like I could have a personal conversation to help me figure out the finances, but also just, I need some words of encouragement, and that's where also I lean on my other, fellow friends that are business owners. I remember talking to Kimberly Walker every day. We'd like kind of check in and be like, okay, what fire are you putting out today? Like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to solve this? What are we going to do? And so that kind of like fed my energy to come back stronger. So that by the time we were able to reopen, we were ready to go, and then business started coming back in, and now we've been really busy, fortunately. So I'm thankful.
Yeah, well, and you talked earlier about, as you were talking about the acrylic piece, right? The idea that you're going to use them but you had to compete with hospitals. How does one even make an argument to compete with the hospitals?
Yeah, fortunately, again, I work with fantastic clients that have good perspective. And they're, if once I explain that to them, they're like, oh God, yeah, I get it, and I'm happy to wait a few more months until the material comes in and we have it just right and the hospitals are taken care of. So fortunately, my clients are very patient and understanding.
Well, and then you talked about, again, you want to use wood in all yours, and we've been hearing from construction companies.
Yes. Yeah.
Were there other surprising competitors for products that you were getting, or is those?
I think it was just really that acrylic, yeah. But then it kind of ended up being fun too, because like we'd get pieces that would come in acrylic, and we were reframing them, and instead of like putting that acrylic in the trash, I would just put it on like Facebook Marketplace for free, because I was like, pay it forward to the next person. We had people coming all the time to come pick up these used pieces of acrylic that were great for like a partition somewhere, like horrible for framing, but it was a great way to kind of pay that forward.
Well, and thinking about kind of that framing industry, are there things that you would say are folks might not expect about the work you do, or the industry in general?
I just think it's probably one of my favorite parts about the business is just how personal and hands-on it is. And I know that there's online options for folks to be able to like send in their artwork to be framed somewhere else, and then it comes back to them complete and they open it up and put it on their wall. And I understand that that's competition for us, but I still think there's a place for that personal relationship and talking to our clients face to face. And we're such a tangible, we want to like touch all of our samples. Like I want to show my corner samples of molding to my customers and let them touch it and feel it and like see what it looks like in their house versus looking at it and choosing a finish on a computer monitor, because we all know that computer monitors, like the colors, what you see as blue on yours is definitely not blue on mine. And it just, I want to have that custom experience for everybody that comes in so that they know what they're getting and then they love what they're getting.
And I would say it's going to be in your house, going to be in your office, going to be somewhere that you're.
Yes.
So like you said, it's, having that experience to touch the frame, to see the frame, to see that coloring, so important and incredibly kind of challenging to try and do over the internet. I do want to check in with, like, I know you have young children, and I don't know how your parents approached you with on this, but do you hope one day they will take over the business?
I think the best approach that my parents did were they gave me no pressure. There was zero pressure or talk about me taking it over. And so that encouraged me to do my own thing and then to make my own decision to jump into the business. And then also I'd say, like, my parents definitely like modeled the joy of the business to me. It's a really like good business. You're not going to make millions of dollars in it, but I can support my family. I can support my lifestyle. I can contribute and participate in our community. And I've got great coworkers and clients. So the quality of life is great in this business. And I think that's something that my children can see now with us, and it'll be up to them whether they want to take it over. It would be interesting to see them compete over, like, are they both going to take it over? Like, I don't know. We'll see.
I was going to ask you if you definitely don't choose it, but like, is there one that seems like the one who is more interested, or like at this point they're just like, we don't know, there's just pieces of wood?
Yeah, exactly. I'd say my daughter Ava, who's 4, likes organizing all of the samples. Like, so I'll just have her like come up with a rainbow and like hunt around for all the samples and like put them in a rainbow pattern. And I know she likes that. I will say that they both like the business aspect side of it, of like going to the bank and doing the bank deposit. Cause like, do you get stickers and lollipops every time you go drop off your money? Sure. Depends on how much money you're dropping off, So I think, they're exposed to that. So yeah, they'll have to make that decision.
That's great. And, one thing I want to ask you, which I, have here is just a personal question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite piece of art in the world? Maybe one that you've visited over and over, or that's on your bucket list still to see?
Geez. I would say like bucket list. God, there's so many other places that I want to go to, but like, even having been to Paris multiple times, I've actually never been to the Louvre. I've been to Musée d'Orsay and I've been to all these other smaller galleries, but like never the Louvre. And I think that's what's great about life, where you can be like, I haven't done everything. Like, I still have things that I want to see and places I want to go. Ermina just sent me some pictures of this great place in New York, and now I'm forgetting the name, but it's all this sculpture like in 500 acres in like upstate New York. And I'm like, now I need to go there. I need to go see what this place is. So, I'm ready to go explore everywhere.
Well, yeah, that actually is surprising that you hadn't been to the Louvre, having been over there.
Yeah, yep. It's another reason to go back is what I keep saying to myself. I'm like, just another reason to go back.
I think you nailed that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to learn more about Framework, where should they go?
So we've got our website is sloart.com, SLOART.com. And then we're on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And we will definitely drop that into the comments below. So just click on over to go visit them. And so I like to end our conversation every week with this question. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
So since the pandemic, we started a Friday family movie night, and we go get pizza, and like we did like a whole pizza tour of San Luis, during those times. And so we'll probably go to Bear in the Ren, have pizza together as a family, and enjoy a movie and start the weekend that way.
Well, it sounds fabulous. So, Ali, thank you so much for being here. It's been terrific learning more about you, your family, and Frameworks. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Jim.
As always, to you, our guests, if you have questions, feel free to add them into the Facebook comments below, and Ali will hop on and try to answer them when she gets a moment. We thank you so much for tuning in. We Hope to see you next Friday at noon for another working lunch. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.